Gosh, how would you like to be Seth? 2 days before, you get the note, hey, you're going to be keynoting and basically running this whole thing for us. So thank you, Seth, for stepping in, and you're doing a great job. You know, I'd like to give a warm welcome to all of the people here. A lot of people that I've known before and seen in various business reviews that we've had, and many that I met last night. I really do appreciate you coming and joining us. This is going to be, I think, a very good session where we're going to learn a lot about what's happening around us. And one of the biggest values of bringing the group together like this is that you can actually share between each other. You know, a lot of utilities are in this room. A lot of experiences in this room. A lot of problems are in this room that we share commonly, and we'll work together to solve them. I couldn't be... You know, when I think about the theme that we had this year of adaptability, and if you think back, and we're going to go through some of this, but if you think back just 2 years, how much change there has been in this industry. How much change. I came 3 years ago, 5 years ago, I guess, and it was pretty stable, slowly moving up and to the right, and then something big happened. And it's happening at a very rapid pace. So, you know, when I kind of think about it, adaptability is key. And adaptability means that something is changing, and you have to do something about it. So I think that this is going to be a great forum to discuss that. I think there's going to be some very interesting things that you're going to hear about, but it's going to be a very good couple days. You know, look at this number, 128 gigawatts. A lot has to do with this number. A lot of the change has to do with this number. You know, when you think about it, does anybody recognize this number? A few people do. People that researched it, I'm sure do. You know, it's the peak demand forecast from FERC that updated the 2024 outlook. The updated forecast. It's already doubled this year alone. Think about that. Doubled this year alone. This is an industry that went pretty stable for a very long period of time, and now in just 2 years, it's up and to the right and moving very fast. And you know, thinking going from 23 to 128, it's incredible. Five-fold change. You know, 12%. 12%. That number, the number that data centers are expected to consume of the total energy in the United States, in North America, actually. 12%. The number today is 4.4. Think about that change in just one sector of technology and what the impact will be across all sectors. 1,240 data centers. 1,240 data centers as of the end of 2024. There's another 1,000 slated. Don't know if they'll all make it. You know, communities are starting to be against them. But the move, the force is inevitable. And it's coming, and it's coming hard. You know, that's 4 times the number of data centers that we were dealing with in 2010, and the amount of power is immensely more that these data centers are going to be using and projected to use. You know, when you think about that entire ecosystem that has to go along with that, the backup generators, all the things around it. You know, one factoid that was brought to my attention that, you know, these data centers will use, it's estimated by 2028, up to 600 terawatts. Think about that. I mean, that's just a number you can hardly even conceive of. And just the data centers alone. And we're not talking about all the manufacturing plants, and we're not talking about the supply chain to get stuff there and to maintain there. The world is changing amongst us. It's changing very rapidly. And it provides us a tremendous opportunity, which also provides us the opportunity to adapt. You know, 23%. Anybody got an idea what that one number is? All you got to do is look at your monthly bill, and you'll know what that is. That is the average increase in utility prices in 2025 compared to 2020 across the nation. You'll hear in a bit some specific state data that will just blow your mind. But that's the average over 4 years, up 23%. If that isn't a change, If that isn't a real look at, hey, my monthly bill and what I'm going to do about that, those are real numbers. You know, the affordability of energy is becoming a major factor in people's expense budgets. And it's not going to get better soon. There's no savior out there in the short term that's going to really dampen that. So we're all going to have to think, and we're going to have to adapt on what we do, the piece of the puzzle that we have, how we can hopefully make this better. But I guarantee you it's something every utility, policymaker, and customer is now grappling with this very number of the increases in utility prices, which go straight to the rates. 80%. 80%. You know, just paying for electricity is one more challenge, but 80% of the population in North America is facing will face some kind of challenge this year in terms of blackouts, brownouts, or shortages of power. Think about that number. And we all know how our customers feel whether there's a blackout or whether there's a brownout. Hostility is probably the word that we hear a lot. But 80% will face something this year. That's a big number when we look at it. And you know, the rising demand and the generation requirements are expected to continually outpace supply. So, the people in this room, we all have a piece of that puzzle that we can solve. We can't solve the whole thing, but we can make a real difference with what we do in terms of energy efficiency, virtual power plants, all sorts of things that we do. 27 billion was spent in 2024 just in extreme weather. So not only are we talking about data centers and more manufacturing plants and more EVs, and you just go down the list of all things that we're adding on from an electrification perspective, we're talking 27 billion in extreme weather events. 27 billion worth of damages. So, you know, even if we come close to solving the supply side, Mother Nature has her own tricks up her sleeve for us. And it's one of the things that we have to consider from a resiliency perspective and dealing with peak loads. So there's a lot of complexity out there, but there's also a lot of different paths to help reduce these challenges that we face. But one thing is for sure, you know, resilience is a necessity. It's something that we always need to be thinking about. You know, a case, I was up in the Northwest, actually that's where I'm from, is I grew up in the Northwest. Bonneville Power Administration, you know, how's our industry reacting? Here's one indicator. Bonneville Power issued a clear warning recently. If they doubled their capacity, they still could not meet the projected needs by 27 of the customers they serve. And a lot of Bonneville Power are dams. Think about a little bit of a drought. Whatever you forecasted for power generation would be less if there's less water going through the dams. So it's just an example. They could double the output of their entire ecosystem and still not meet the demands by 27. And as I've read all the IRPs across the country, one of the things that I've really kind of noticed lately is in the out years, the numbers are negative. People are identifying now, we're not going to have enough based on our projections. Probably the most interesting thing in this conversation was, well, what are you going to do about it? And they said, we don't know yet. But if we don't do something aggressive and unique, we know we're not going to meet the needs. So they're working on many different things to try to figure out how we're going to do this. Is it brokering power? Are we going to bring it in? How are we going to do this from other areas? Where are we going to put batteries? What programs are we going to run? A lot of stuff and a lot of worries. This is a conversation that's going to repeat itself state by state, utility by utility, across the nation that we have. And we're going to have to adapt. So, the scale and the challenge is also the opportunity. And we have to always think about that. That it does provide, it's very challenging, no question about that, the supply-demand imbalance and what it's going to cause and weather and all those things. But the fact of the matter is it's a huge opportunity for our industry to stand up and do something material that can help our clients and our customers. Kearney reported on utility investment, and this is kind of the interesting paradigm that you've got. At the same time, you have to build out all this infrastructure. Usually the way you pay for the infrastructure is through rates. And the ratepayers screaming bloody murder that they can't handle the rate increases at the same time. It's kind of the perfect problem. So a lot of stress in this mismatch, unprecedented requests by the utilities. They understand the power supply demand shortage, and they're looking for ways to do it across all mediums, not just solar, not just wind. They're looking at every single thing to generate more power and ways to use software, to share power, to balance loads, all that stuff. But the aggregate problem is huge when you look at the macro going from 23 to 128. Well, what's the power being used? Regulatory. They're kind of stuck. Do we give them rate increases? Where, if you've ever been at a regulatory meeting or a PUC meeting, yeah, increasing rates, that's going to be really tough, but they need increased rates to build the infrastructure. So it's an interesting time. So the scale and the speed of the unmatched are unprecedented. And we're just going to have to work through it. They've never sought this much capital in such a short period of time. Regulators have never faced this frequency of rate increases and rate cases, some coming back within the same year. This is a challenging time. This is a really challenging time. The result is, tension and skepticism and uncertainty, often to the utilities' disadvantage. Because the utilities, I firmly believe, are trying to do a good job, and they're trying to solve this problem, and they see this, light at the end of the tunnel, which is actually a train today. Eventually, we'll find a way. But the only way is through being able to adapt and think of new ways to get more power on the grid and to be more efficient in using that power at the same time, that puzzle. Turn our sights to something more helpful. We could be saving up to $35 billion over the next decade using virtual power plants. It's another way that we can help solve the problem. This could be achievable by deploying almost 60 gigawatts of power. 60 gigawatts. Instead of relying on more expensive infrastructure like natural gas or utility, large-scale batteries, those things, and those are going to have a place. They're all going to have a place. They're all going to have a place. So as we put things on the scale to try to solve the problem, the key is what we can do with VPP, with energy efficiency, with all those kind of things, we can dampen the need for some of those other things. But we're going to need it all. We're going to need it all. And we're going to have to do it efficiently and quickly and all those things at the same time. So scalable savings is something that everybody in this room is concerned about and what we can do to do our part to solve this overall problem. I think that at the end of the day, VPPs offer, a smarter, more cost-effective path forward for that piece of the puzzle for utilities, customers, and the grid as a whole. But the key is, no one thing is going to solve it all. So we have to think about how we integrate these things, how we make them work as seamlessly as possible with one thing in mind, which is reducing the load to be able to service all these things that are actually going to make our lives better eventually, but it's going to take a lot of work to get there. So let's get started. You know, I'm very excited today. You know, when we think about the Energy Forum, when we think about, you know, DSM, we think about emerging grid technologies, we think about AI, which, you know, the very thing that's sucking all this power is what's going to help us be more efficient to deliver, so we need it, that's for sure. You know, demand and supply side strategy, all those things, you know, each topic is one piece of this very big puzzle that we have to work on. You know, at the end of the day, we're going to have to be adaptable. We're going to have to be creative, we're going to have to be collaborative, and we're going to have a shared commitment to efficiency.